Hey there, and welcome to That Bond Show, That Nerdy Site's newest series, and also the number one James Bond rewatch show on the internet, hosted by two guys named Logan and Trevor, probably. I am one
Seems
of
like
your
there's
hosts.
enough modifiers on that to
It's a
make
safe
it true.
bet. Yeah, I hope so. I am one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson, and joining me every one of these next 25 weeks is my co-host, Trevor Starkey. How you doing, Trev?
I'm doing all right. It's going to be an interesting little mini series we've got going on here.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited for this. I think, this is going to be certainly the most ambitious in terms of long-running limited series we've done so far. There will obviously be at least 25 episodes of the show, maybe a special one or two in there somewhere. So I think we'll just dive kind of right into our quick histories with the series. Obviously, if you've ever encountered me anywhere on the internet or in person, you'd be aware of the fact that I am a massive James Bond fan. I love the series. I have literally from my very earliest memories, right? I've watched these movies since I was 5 years old. So for those keeping track at home, that is 24, almost 25 years. In fact, by the time you listen to this podcast, it will be almost certainly 25 years of watching these movies. I think it is right up there with Star Wars as my favorite kind of film franchise and series. And so I have a very near and dear spot in my heart for these kind of films. Less so for the books, as we'll get into as we kind of go down, but certainly for the movies, I absolutely love them. And we'll kind of be providing the voice of some backstory and lore throughout this show. I am sure, Trevor, though, your history with the series is very markedly different than my kind of 25-year love story.
Indeed, yeah. My history of the series largely started with GoldenEye on the N64, and basically the Pierce Brosnan movies. I knew Bond as a character and stuff like that because obviously like pop culture zeitgeist.
Yeah.
By the time I was growing up, but yeah, I never really watched the movies, or at least I don't have any concrete memories of watching the movies. My dad might have had them on or something, and I might have seen bits here and there.
They were always on Spike, so there's definitely a chance. Yeah,
sure. But yeah, my like legacy with Bond is largely confined to the Brosnan years, where I saw all of those movies as they were coming out, because that was like prime. I was in like middle school to high school kind of like range of stuff, and so it was we would go see movies with friends or with my family and something. And then I've seen like half of the Daniel Craig ones, basically the ones that people were like, hey, you should see these movies. So
sure.
Casino Royale, when that came out, I watched that. Buzz was not great on Quantum of Solace, so I skipped on that one. Everybody was over the moon on Skyfall, so I watched that one. Then Spectre was like, and then most recently I watched No Time to Die. So those are pretty much like the only Bond movies I'd seen before this. I did have You Only Live Twice, I believe. That was given to me on VHS for like a birthday.
Nice.
Like from one of my friends that I played GoldenEye with. Like that was like his birthday gift to me. But I don't think I ever watched it, or if I watched it, like we watched it as like friends having like a sleepover in high school or something like that, or middle school. And I remember virtually nothing about it, if I ever watched it at all. So, this is pretty much for a lot of the Connery and Lazenby and Timothy Dalton and Roger Moore eras. Like I'm going in largely blind on these. Like there are elements just from knowing you or from
knowing pop culture
and covering it to varying degrees in recent years. Like much like I've never watched any of the old Doctor Who episodes, but I know a lot about old Doctor Who, just because of kind of its place in my nerdy fandoms and stuff like that.
Really
I know elements of Bond, and I know like I'll know like fun facts and trivia here and there and stuff, but like there's a whole bunch that's just like completely mixed up. Like we'll talk about like one of the, I think, probably most iconic scenes of this particular movie. I did not know was related to this particular movie. or this particular character I thought was like a completely different character in the Bond sphere of things, just because of like name recognition and stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of like, oh, this is new to me, but there's going to be like a weird sense of familiarity in some of these elements.
I think the Doctor Who comparison is a really good point in a lot of ways too, and I think part of what makes James Bond so unique among all film entities, really among all pop culture franchises, is its longevity, right? Like, there is certainly no film series that has continuously been going for the better part of 60 years by the time these episodes go live. This obviously first one coming out in 62. And so I think the way it's been able to permeate pop culture generation after generation, era after era, and the way that it hit at such a good point for that, right? Like 1962 is, I mean, this is literally when a significant amount of films are still filmed in black and white even, right? Like, and this came out very much in color, and it kind of grabbed as audiences were really kind of flocking to movies more and more, and as movies became, I think, a bigger part of the pop culture kind of consciousness. And so I think it also came out at a particularly perfect time to really capture that hold that it's had for 60 plus years, right? I mean, we'll get to it later on the podcast, but our parents were children when this movie came out, right? When the series started. Yeah, very exciting. Yeah, I think as you will kind of hear or watch as we kind of go through these movies, I think an important element for me as someone who loves James Bond as much as I do and loves that character and loves the movies is also recognizing that I think if you love something, that gives you, not even gives you, it makes you have the responsibility to also critique it and criticize it for its flaws, of which there are many in James Bond. And, you know, I think it will be fun to get into the elements of a series where it fails, just as much it'll be fun to kind of gush over the movies that I think are excellent. And Dr. No, I think, is a great gateway into that. But before we get too much further into that, we have got turn over the movie itself, which is, of course, Dr. No, which was released in October 5th of 1962. It was, of course, the first ever Bond movie. Not the first Bond novel, which was Casino Royale, which we'll get to in about 22 weeks, but the first movie released for a lot of reasons. First and foremost among them, probably because it's an incredibly simple story, as we will discuss in a little bit here. They basically spend the entire movie on one location. There's really only one set piece explosion at the end. It is basically a detective story every since up until then. And it makes it a pretty easy jumping off point into the series at large. The star and cast of Dr. No, of course, the indomitable Sean Connery making his first ever appearance as James Bond. He will, of course, be here for the next couple of weeks as he kind of defines the figure of James Bond. Alongside him, we have Ursula Anders as Honey Rider, not the voice of Honey Rider, though, as you will get to. Joseph Wiseman as Dr. No, Jack Lord, absolutely dashing, in pre-Hawaii 5-0 days as Felix Leiter, Bernard Lee as M in his first appearance, John Kitzmiller as Quirrell, and it was directed by Terrence Young in his first directorial debut in the Bond series. Going from that, we've got a segment I think I like going forward, considering it has such a long history, which is the Blast from the Past section of the show.
Or as you've got it in the show notes, Blast from the Blast.
Blast from the Blast, man. Whatever sticks.
Also, just real quick before we dive into that, I especially knowing this era of films, having like, oh, this came out October 5th, 1962. I was like, it did, but I had also seen, and kind of doing a little bit of my own research, that U.S., and this might be one of the things you have kind of in the trivia, like the U.S. release got delayed because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so I was like, so when did it come out here? It came out here in May of 63. So like it was almost a year later before we here stateside ended up getting our first taste of Sean Connery as Bond.
That's pretty good. I also chose October 5th because that is the like retroactive date
Yeah.
that they chose. Like this is Bond's anniversary for every year kind of
Yeah.
thing now too. So that is a date that they celebrate. So that's what I will work with as well.
Yeah, it was
But
the London premiere. It came out in the
Exactly.
rest of the UK a few days later, basically.
For a lot, like Trevor said, for a lot of these, really the first dozen, you could argue, Bond movies, it was just a different era of film releases. And so there would be staggered releases and a US release versus a UK release. For the most part, I will be working off of the UK releases until they get synchronized because it is obviously a UK icon. But yes, Blast from the Past, the president, speaking of Trevor, Cuban Missile Crisis, was JFK at the time. My own personal father was all of 4 years old when this movie came out, and my mom was 5 months old when Dr. No came out. Trevor, do you have a timestamp for your parents' age when this movie came out?
I know. One of them was, I feel like 1960, so it would have been a couple years old.
Two, yeah.
But I don't remember which one that is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Very much in that time period of 2, 3, 4.
I think my mom would have been 2, and then my dad would have been like 8. I think
Trevor's dad's
I think he was 54.
Bunch. All right.
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, I liked the perfectly timedness of my mom being born the same year the movie came out. Yes, the highest grossing movie this year was The Longest Day. Trevor, bonus points if you can guess who the actor in The Longest Day was. Unless you already looked it up.
I have not. No. Gonna guess Humphrey Bogart.
That's a good guess. You would have been close if you had thought of Westerns. The lead actor was John Wayne in The Longest Day, which is, to be fair, a pretty decent movie for the time and place. But yeah, The Longest Day was the highest grossing movie, which I really am going to love. I think that recurring feature as well as we kind of get to actual blockbuster movies sort of come to dominate it. I also liked this fun fact. The Super Bowl did not exist and would not exist for another 5 years to date the NFL. And as is shown in this movie, actually, John Glenn this year had become the first ever American to orbit the Earth. Footage of that is shown in this film at the end. It goes successfully.
Yay.
Dr. No does not stop it.
Yeah, that was a very interesting element of watching this. I was talking with Frank, and I sat down. We were discussing one of our That D Plus shows. At the time of recording, we're pre-recording a handful of these episodes, so like we're recording this peek behind the curtain like early December, and when Frank and I were just talking about it, like I had this realization a good 30 minutes into the movie of like, oh, that's right. Like this is before we landed on the moon. Like Neil Armstrong has not become a thing yet.
Nope.
When this, because I just watched so few movies from this era. Basically like Star Wars 1977 is typically I would point to as like the oldest movie I regularly watch, apart from like It's a Wonderful Life or some very specific instances.
Great,
but yeah, so like going back this far to like world events and like the opening little bit where they're talking about toppling, I'm like, oh, I feel like that's going to come into play, but also I've never heard of this as a thing. So it's just kind of a weird, weird time capsule.
It's so funny that you say that too, because watching this movie, I had probably midway through, I was reminded of, spoiler, like they're going to be really into space these first 6-7 movies. Like it's going to be a plot point that they go back to a lot because it was obviously dominating the world, right? Like I think it is such a cool time capsule, right? Like Sean Connery's run, his original run, quote unquote, ends before we've landed on the moon still, right? And so it is such a funny thing of, oh right, like this is a whole other world, right? Like this came out literally as we first orbited Earth from the US side of things. And so I think it's really neat in that way. Like they're, like you said, like most people, I would say Star Wars is a pretty good starting point for when they've seen movies before they were born. In some ways, I actually find it kind of cool that I did get into James Bond movies so young, because I feel like the barrier to entry for other older movies was lowered, right? Like I feel like once you hit a certain point, it's like, oh, this looks dated if you weren't in it from the beginning. And for me, I didn't have that issue, right? So I did love a lot of other 60s movies, a lot of like Western movies kind of thing. And it helped that my dad was big into those, right? And so I've seen The Longest Yard, right? The Longest Yard. I've seen The Longest Day, right? And I've seen a lot of these other movies from the time period and have a soft place in my heart for them. And so that is one of the cool aspects, I think, of enjoying the James Bond series, and in particular, obviously, the Sean Connery ones, is that I think you get to kind of just enjoy how 60s these movies are. And like there were so many times watching people was like, oh man, like, you know, it's not a feature on any of the shows we do, but John O. Peck from 8-Bit has his own kind of go back and watch older movies show called Comedy Rewind. And one of the segments there is how would this taking place in today change the movie, right? Like what sort of like effect would modern technology play? And it's like, oh man, like so much throughout these first few decades of Bond, it's like, oh, well, just having a cell phone would definitely cut down on a lot of this, right? And so it's gonna be kind of fun to watch it through that lens as well. But yes, after Blast from the Past, we've got the classic, bringing it right from D+. We've got the trivia section here. I get to actually be the guy who dives through IMDb or the Bond history.
Enjoy the extra hour or so it takes to put together the show notes every time.
I will say I do have a slight advantage over you where I've just seen a lot of these movies a lot. And so I know, like the first 4 fun facts in this, I just already knew and be like, oh, this is a fun fact, I think. But yes, so the first one is probably one of the more kind of famous trivia facts from this film, which is it is actually not Sean Connery, but stuntman Bob Simmons who appears in the opening gun barrel sequence in this movie. In fact, for the first 3 movies, it will be Bob Simmons and not Sean Connery in the opening gun barrel sequence. This is also the only film in the entire series to not have a prologue. You just go right into the opening credits and the movie on from there, which does tie into the second, or I guess third, trivia fact, which is this is the only film to not feature its own distinct theme music. It is just the Bond theme.
So like jumping on, I mean, like knowing the Bond theme so iconically, I never knew it was there from the beginning. Like hearing that, like on this first one out, like I was blown away that like, oh, they nailed that right out the gate and made it stick. Like it still holds up really well today.
One of the, it's not a trivia fact that I put in, but it is a fact that I kind of wanted to dive off of from this, which is there is a 60-year-long running dispute over who authored the Bond theme, right? Between Monty Norman and John Barry. And in Dr. No, when you watch this movie, the like very like guitar heavy focused theme you hear in the opening credits is different than how it will be played throughout most of the rest of the movie. And it's because Monty Norman did the opening credits one, and then they had John Barry kind of work it as well. And he was like, hey, this sounds better not like that, not like a rock heavy theme. And so he kind of refined it and tweaked it. And also, John Barry, they will bring back to do music for Bond movies all the way through the end of the 80s. Monty Norman never makes an appearance again, never works with them again. And John Barry and Monty Norman basically be in lawsuits through, from what I could see, into the 2000s over who was the correct, I guess authored would be the word you would use, of the Bond score. And so it is a interesting fact on that as well. Yeah, I mean, literally the Bond's first appearance and the usage of that music, like you said, right from the gate, they just nailed it. Like they had it locked down. It is such a perfect usage for like music for that character. And yeah, we don't get any sort of other theme unless you want to count like Three Blind Mice.
I mean, yeah, that did jump out at me as like, oh, that's the Skyfall of its day, I guess.
Yeah, it's always funny going back to Dr. No because I never forget it, but like I never like fully remember like, oh right, like it is just that, and then they just cut to Three Blind Mice and you're off. And what a weird segue song Three Blind Mice is. But hey, like if it works, it works, I guess. But yes, after that, we have the fact that at an hour and 50 minutes, roughly, there was also some disputed nature of how long exactly the movie is. I also saw an hour 48, 49 to 51. But we're going to settle an hour and 50. This is the shortest film in the series for the first 46 years of the series run, all the way until Quantum of Solace would surpass it. And I think really the first few Bond movies, pretty much all of Connery's run, with one pretty notable exception, clock in either right below 2 hours or right around 2 hours. They're pretty short, brisk films for the most part. Now we dive into the real nitty-gritty trivia stuff, including a thing that has always bugged me, which is a painting of the Duke of Wellington, which had been stolen in August of 1961 from London's National Gallery, is found on an easel next to the stairs in Dr. No's dining room, which is why whenever Bond walks by it, he stops, notices it, and keeps going. The painting itself was recovered in 1965, but when the movie came out in 1962, British audiences laughed upon seeing the painting, knowing that it had been stolen. According to director Terence Young, the idea for the stolen painting prop came from the film's Irish co-screenwriter, Johanna Harwood. Even watching it again now and knowing that this is like a gag they do in the film, it is such a, like, they linger on that shot for a good 5 or 10 seconds. And so, like, for sure, like, you watch a movie, I can't even imagine, like, you were just like, that was a weird shot of this painting. I guess it's a nice painting.
Yep. That's exactly how I felt. Like, I saw this little trivia thing afterwards, so yeah, it helped explain that and put it in context. But definitely in the moment, I was just like, is this gonna come back and have some importance? Is it like, is this gonna tie back into the plot? No,
it's a hilarious gag. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I remember as a kid. Oh, because also even just pinpointing that that's like the Duke of Wellington is like a hell of a pull. Yeah. But as a kid, I was always like, I don't know what this is, and I'd like would make my own head canon, because obviously when I first watched these movies, I didn't have like, I mean, the internet existed, but I didn't have it in the same way I do now. And so I was like, who is this guy? And like, is he related to Dr. No? Or like, so like, I would like create my own head canon of who this man was in relation to Dr. No, and also Bond would know him. And so the fact that it's basically like a Thomas Crown Affair capper had, you know, brought it to Dr. No is kind of a cool bit, even if it is maybe the thing that is among the most dated in terms of references in the film itself. Mm-hmm. Ursula Anders, as we talked about earlier, dialogue was dubbed by voice artist Nikki Vander Zaal from the film. So all of her dialogue is not her actual voice. Her accent was deemed a little bit too thick, and so they tried to do something a bit more subtle. As an extra add-on to that, whenever she will make another Bond appearance in an unofficial Bond movie, her dialogue is again dubbed by Nikki Vander Zaal for a second time. I always thought that was interesting. That will be another recurring feature of some of the earlier Bond films, is people being dubbed. Otherwise, we have production designer Ken Adams would get his start with the series here and would go on to help design 7 Bond films, including 5 of the first 7, helping to solidify the iconic look and feel of the Connery-era Bond films. He is routinely deemed one of the integral parts of what made the series so successful, alongside director Terence Young's direction for the first few films, and of course, Sean Connery's performance. Indeed, one of my favorite facts about Ken Adams is he is going to be the production designer for one of the most iconic Bond sets of all time, and also 40 years from now would help design the locations and production feel, I guess, of the 2004 video game GoldenEye Rogue Agent, which pulls numerous classic Bond villains like Dr. No and Goldfinger, and some of their famous locations into the video game. So, not the only person in this movie, actually, who made an appearance 40 years later in the video game, because Sean Connery would also star in From Russia with Love, which was his last ever acting appearance, was From Russia with Love, the video game, in 2006. All right. Director Terence Young would direct 3 of the first 4 Bond movies and would play a crucial role in helping Sean Connery form the character, with Miss Moneypenny herself, Lois Maxwell, saying, quote, Terrence took Sean under his wing. He took him to dinner, to his tailor. He showed him how to walk, how to talk, even how to eat, end quote. And Connery himself also saying the huge role that Terrence Young would help play in terms of getting the feel and look of the character right. Connery, of course, very much had the opposite of a James Bond background, coming from like the rough side of Scotland, left school at 15, joined the Navy, would be very kind of this rugged, uber masculine man. And so Terrence Young is credited with helping kind of give this early Bond kind of his mannerisms and a lot of his feel and look. That is the trivia. Trevor, you got something?
Well, I was gonna say I have one more thing that because we're admittedly this is the first episode, so like we're still working out some of the like the formatting stuff, and so I had pulled in. I didn't know if this was gonna be like a segment that there would be part of like a segment of mine or something, or if this will just fall into like a podcast from the podcast, or if it would fall under trivia here. But I did pull the body count of of the film, and like it was originally pitched as, or like I originally pulled it in mind of like seeing like if I could quiz you with like how many people does Bond kill in this movie.
Ooh, okay, yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay. So yeah, but I have the full count as well of not only Bond's kills but just everybody who dies in the movie. So
that's a lot harder.
No, that's why I'm only asking like how many people does Bond kill, and if you can, like bonus points for if you know who.
Bond kills the driver. That's the first person that he kills in the film.
No, driver kills himself. Cyanide.
Oh, cyanide. You're right. So yeah, I guess Bond doesn't kill him. So yeah, then Bond wouldn't kill anybody until Professor Dent, when he shoots him in a great scene that I'm going to talk about for quite a bit. And then after that, Bond kills Dent. Bond won't kill anyone else until they get to Crab Key, I believe, where he kills the guard who walks past him. And Honey Rider's like, "Why'd you do it?" And he's like, "Because I had to," which is maybe disputed. And then after that, he might only kill one other person, which would be Dr. No. I'm trying to think. I only have 3 that he like kills. He knocks out a lot of people, but I would say like kills. I'm going to say 3 is my final count.
Per the site that I pulled this from, I think it was just like Fandom's wiki or something like that. I have it bookmarked actually, so I will return to it. They do count the decontamination technician as a kill of Bond's that like he takes the suit from before going in for Dr. No. So they listed 4, but yeah, it's unclear. It's questionable
if he's dead.
If he's knocked out or dead. I mean, he definitely like. He probably almost certainly dies as a result of being knocked out and unable to like save his own life as a result. But
fair play, yeah.
Okay.
And then total in the movie killed. Yeah, then you're getting Strangaway, his secretary, the driver. So I'm gonna and like a few others. I'm gonna say, and not like unless they're kind of like people who die on the base, but not kind of like the Crab Key explosion. I'm gonna say 9. Right?
12 is like there's a like IMDb trivia was like body count 16, and so that was like my initial, but per this thing, and it checked out with like what I remember from the film. Strangway's the secretary, Jones the driver, so that's 3. The 3 blind mice, 4, 5, 6.
Do they die?
They die they're in the hearse when it goes off the cliff. Like they're chasing Bond down. So the hearse driver as well. So that's 7.
That's a good one.
Dent is 8. The dock guard is 9. Coral, who just gets burnt to a crisp, is 10 there. And then Bond's last 2 kills there, or potential kills of the technician and Dr. No, bring it up to 12.
Okay. The body count, the Bond one, absolutely, I'm super excited for that. That's always gonna be pretty-ish low.
Yeah.
When we get to like how many people die in the movie in general, they're gonna be. I'm thinking of Pierce Brosnan in particular.
Oh yeah,
that's gonna be like triple figures for sure.
Yeah, no, I like one of the things I already saw was like Bond has or Pierce Brosnan Bond has the most kills in a single movie with like 100 and something.
Yeah, there are just scenes in that movie. Like, that'll be a fun one to bring forward. Great reminder there. The next one. I'm going to jump. I was going to do something else, but I'm going to jump and just go right into the recap, Trevor. So what are your initial reactions of Dr. No?
Oh, I mean, my initial reactions were, uh, I enjoyed it better than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Freely admit
Yeah.
that, because this was very much like, this isn't my era of film,
Mm-hmm.
and it does have a very dated feel in that
Mm-hmm.
regard, but like I think the fact you kind of touched on this early on, like the fact that this is much more of like a detective story
Mm-hmm.
where you're trying to kind of like put the pieces together to like solve this mystery of what's going on here, I think helps it, because when it dips into like the action, it's, I'm sure, groundbreaking action for the time, but now it's just kind of like laughable.
Mm-hmm.
Like that the his fight scene with that driver Jones,
Mm-hmm.
is like four moves. One of them is literally a judo flip, so like
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, oh, like Austin Powers just lifted that wholesale. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a gag so much as like, this is just what passed for action in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into like the car chase sequence with the hearse, it very much was like, oh, this is hilarious compared to,
Mm-hmm.
what we've just seen in No Time to Die or in any Fast and Furious movie for the last 20 years. Like, by comparison, it's very much that it like, as a result of just the pop culture that has happened between now and then, it reminds me more of Toonces the Cat from SNL sketches, which is,
Okay.
if for those that don't know or do not remember, like, it was a series of sketches where it was just a cat, like little puppet cat driving on a very clearly like green screen background kind of thing, and then like somebody will be having a conversation in the car, and then Toonces loses control and the car goes flying off a cliff and just explodes. And so it's basically like exactly what we see
Mm-hmm.
in that sequence here. So yeah, like there are elements like that where I was just like, ooh, this is silly, but like, by and large, like
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated the detective story. I appreciated the kind of like following of the breadcrumbs that Bond is doing. I appreciated that, like, for so much of the movie, like he seems like he is going in knowing that like wherever he's going is going to try and kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But he just kind of like faces it head on with like the understanding that he'll get out of it. In particular, I think of the sequence when he goes to see like the secretary or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that he ends up like carting off to jail. Like, he knows she's trying to kill him, but that doesn't stop him from going and like banging her a couple times, like before, sending her off and then setting up Dent. like,
Mm-hmm.
like, and same with like going to the island. Like, he knows everybody on that island
Yeah.
is going to try and kill him,
Yeah.
but he makes do. So like, I appreciated that it sets up this character of Bond as kind of like a fearless person who then also admits that he's afraid when trying to like,
Mm-hmm.
calm down Honey
Honey.
Rider. So yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, like, Dr. No is really interesting because in a lot of ways, it is this weird dichotomy of a quintessential Bond movie and also the least Bond movie, right? Like, they're very much still figuring out the formula and the right kind of balance and equations, of like what a Bond movie should be. Connery is, Connery is the second youngest person who ever be Bond. He's 32 in this movie happens, and so he's young and he feels young at times, I think, too. Um, like, he's still kind of figuring out the role and like how much of like any one direction to kind of be in. And so like I think Doctor No is really interesting like that. Right? Like, I think with the next two movies, you'll see them really kind of start to nail the formula a bit more. And so Doctor No is always fun to watch for that particular reason. Um, it is just a straight up, and like that's why I thought that you might like a lot of the Sean Connery movies, is that there is just an element of them being kind of detective movies, right? Like, he literally is called a detective by Honey Rider at one point. That I think makes him really timeless and really cool. And yeah, I mean, I think there's so many touchstones here, right? Like Dr. No is instantly just like, that's an iconic baddie, right? Like his just look and everything, the claw hands,
I mean, like
right?
that was the like he was not iconic to me. Like I mean, this is the first time like I've known the name of Dr. No,
Mm-hmm.
but I would not have picked out any of those as like feature, especially like Dr. No and the fact that he's set up as like a Chinese villain kind of thing. Like I was not expecting a white guy to come out who has the backstory of like, you know, a Chinese mother and a German father or whatever. And so I was like, I did not like, nothing about him has permeated pop culture to like the degree where I recognized or knew what to expect with him. So like when he appears, I was like, that's Dr. No. Oh, okay. And yeah, his whole thing is like crushy hands. Okay. It took me well after his introduction scene to realize like, and even that, like, it's not really discussed in the movie apart from like, oh, like his work with radiation is what made him like lose his hands. And like that triggered a memory of, I've worked on a show, it's called the Radium Girls or something like that. God, I don't remember. I worked on a play where basically it was like about women who worked in like factories painting like radium on watch dials to help them glow and stuff like that. And like I was like the manager of the factory or whatever, and all these girls are like, their hands are like becoming crippled and stuff like that. And it took like remembering that and remembering like that I'm pretty sure like Mary Curie like lost the use of her hands because of all her work with radiation, to realize that that's like what had happened to him, and he just, I guess, had them replaced with like, you know, evil metal claws or whatever. But yeah, like that, the fact that isn't really explained in the movie, and it's just kind of like we'll show you that these are not like real hands, and he can crush
Buddha,
he can crush a thing, but it's like, wait, so that's his like evil superpower or whatever, like compared to like Jaws, you know, who has like the metal mouth, that iconic from GoldenEye the game. Like Dr. No just was kind of a, oh, that's kind of a nothing guy. Okay.
It's interesting too because he obviously he doesn't make his appearance until the final act of the movie. He's got like his,
I mean, his much more intimidating scene for me was when he's like off screen, like talking to Dent and just scaring the crap out of Dent. Yeah.
Like it's interesting because he is literally obviously the name of the movie, and he's kind of omnipresent over it, right? Like he's always been referenced and talked about, but the fact that you don't see him until the end, I don't know. Like I always thought that payoff worked for me, and like it'll be done, I think, more successfully with another villain, but I think it still works here. And obviously, Dr. No is setting up what is basically going to be the main antagonist for the next few movies we're going to watch with Spectre, right? Like he kind of introduced the fact that he's a member of Spectre. That's kind of the big baddie, right, of kind of the Connery era. And so getting our first idea of what that's going to be, I think is cool as well. But yeah, I mean, I think Dr. No, the film now, is really interesting, right? Like, I think it's one of the movies that I go back and forth on a lot in terms of like, oh, I like this, or oh, maybe it's a bit too slow paced, maybe there's not enough happening. And I always kind of have to kind of bounce back and forth between that reaction and also like, oh, but maybe it's like really well paced. Maybe it is like a cool like gumshoe detective story. And I don't know, like I think the movie is a weird hour and 50-minute long movie, because I think it feels like an hour and 50 minutes long, and like both connotations of that, I think. And we definitely spend a lot of time on like in Jamaica figuring everything out, and we get to Crab Key, and it's sort of this weird, like there's a lot of not doing things in Dr. No.
There's like the pacing wise, like there are a lot of sequences where like pacing here is really cool and really great, and then there are sequences like the girl giving out like street by street directions to how to get to her place. It's like
superimposed over him driving.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is not needed at all, but I guess it was at the time or something like that. It's like like it could have trailed off of like, here's where to find me or something like that. But the
Yeah.
fact that it is like, you go here and then you're going to take a left and then 2 miles down the road, you're going to take up. It's just like, okay, like I get that MapQuest wasn't around or Google Maps wasn't around at this point in time, but I think the audience can take that leap in logic that she gives him directions without giving him directions for us to hear, because like none of those things matter. The only thing that like in retrospect ends up being like, oh, I guess it's interesting that they set that kind of up is like the cement factory of like, oh, cement, that would come in very handy if you're working with toxic radiation in a nearby facility or something like that. But I'm pretty sure that's still like completely unrelated to anything Dr. No's doing. It's just like a cement factory that was there and just is used as like a road mark.
I know that for me, there's just a lot of like I like Doctor No. I like these older movies, but it is funny watching this where the shot that stood out the most to me of like, huh, that's an interesting way that they did that was whenever he goes to meet Coral for the first time and stops the woman on the road and says like, oh, do you know where Coral is? And she points and said, he's right there. And then it cuts to him just walking the rest of the way to Coral. It doesn't cut and just shows him walk the entire rest of the way. And then finally cuts to them and it's like, oh, that was a long shot of the back of Sean Connery walking to see Coral.
Who then
and then again the shot of Coral then walking away
exactly
and
like
that and
leads them down to this little like little hut store or whatever. And it's like, did we what? And then like out there too public, it's like nobody was around you guys. You could have had this conversation there just fine.
But yeah, I mean, like those are, and I also shift into stuff that I think is done really well is like how smart Connery is, I think, as Bond, right? Like you said, where he gets to the airport and puts the hat up when someone tries to take a picture of him, just like on instinct. And then whenever he meets the driver, is like, oh, okay, yeah, let me just go check the reservation real quick. And then phones in and is like, hey, did you submit some here? And like, oh, no, I didn't. You didn't want that, right? And it's like, exactly, right? I might be a few minutes late, right? Like I thought there were cool elements of him being like, this is not his first time doing this, right? Like he's been here before.
Yeah. I mean, that's even another like example of the point I brought up earlier of like, he now knows that something is amiss with this guy and he still gets in the car with them and like knowing full well that they're probably going to try and kill him or something. And it ends up working out for him. They're like in this same vein, like he's smart, but also on the flip side, like, did we need all of that of like him taking the hair and like putting it on the
I love that scene. Like, apparently this is controversial. I love that scene.
I appreciate it. In that like, okay, he's like kind of like booby trapping the room or whatever, but then there ends up being no payoff to it. That was because admittedly I had watched the Honest trailers that they did a few weeks ago that was like just on the Bond things, and they kind of like poke fun at this sequence, and so I was like, okay, well maybe in context I'll have a newfound appreciation for it, and it doesn't like it. It's okay, he knows somebody's kind of messing with him or whatever, but like we never see like how that pays off really, like because it's okay, somebody got into his closet. What did that do? And then somebody tried to open his briefcase or whatever. He has fingerprints on that briefcase now, but like he doesn't really use that. The only like tangible thing it feels like he kind of takes away from that is exactly he doesn't drink the bottle of vodka that's out. He opens the new one that's in the drawer. And so it was like, okay, so the payoff didn't really merit the like time spent in the setup. Whereas like if it had been like, oh, okay, like, he purposely hid something in that closet to like throw somebody off the scent or something, like we just don't like, I didn't see that element of it. So that's why like it feels a little like drawn out for me. It's cool and it's interesting in the like in the sense of simple things to do to figure out if somebody's here messing with your stuff or kind of like and even that like I didn't know what was going on when he's like he looked like he's pouring salt into the briefcase. I'm like, oh, I guess he's like trying to add something to see if like the locking mechanism gets disturbed or something. So when it comes back later and it's like it's fingerprints, I'm like, oh, I definitely didn't pieced together that that's what that was going to be.
Talcum powder.
Yeah, I didn't catch that it was talcum powder. I was like, he's pouring salt in there or something. Like what is that? And he's like, brushing it off. So like there's a little bit of like confusion around that, and then just like it feels like a lack of a payoff.
Yeah, I think that is fair. But that scene, especially as a kid, like I love that scene. Which I mean, like he's so fucking smart. Like this dude just like known someone's tracking him or not. It's like falling behind him. Yeah, I mean, in terms of other things I love, right? Like I love, like Felix Leiter is not in the movie for that long. But Jack Lord is just so cool. Like this is basically just him doing like a pilot for like the exact same character he's gonna play in Hawaii Five-0, and it's great. That character is great, right? And he just looks so cool, so dashing. I've always loved Coral too. Rest in peace. Poor guy got burned to a crisp, like you said. And yeah, like I think I like this small cast of characters they give kind of around Bond, but each one kind of gets some sort of moment. We obviously get our first moment with like Lois Maxwell's Moneypenny and Bernard Lee as M. They're going to be here for forever. And we get to see not Desmond Llewellyn as Q. We get a different Q for only one movie. Hope you liked him. That was your last chance to get it. Who also, again, in terms of like a pod within a pod of like our Q Lab section, really only one gadget. He gets a brand new gun. He gets a Walter PPK. He's going to have it for the next like 35 years. So it's pretty great. And that's it. And so even there again, like in terms of them figuring it out, right? Like the music is just the Bond theme. The gadgets are just the gun, which we don't even see him use once, I guess, right? When he shoots Din, and then maybe a second time if he's shooting at the like dragon, which is another thing that I'm really curious to get your thoughts on, because like I would assume you would never have seen the dragon before the movie happened, and so hearing the fact that a not insignificant plot point is the fact that Krabkey has a dragon, and hearing about this again and again and again, and then seeing the dragon, where was your sense of, that could fool someone, or I don't know about that one, guys?
I mean, like, yeah, the way everybody has this fear about this dragon, thinking it's a real legitimate dragon, I was like, okay, well, it's clearly not a real legitimate dragon. So when it ends up coming out and it's a slow, clunky tank with a flamethrower, I was like, I mean, for the time, sure. Like, I'm sure that if this were a movie that was made now, they would be able to put some like extra muscle into like really creating some kind of like cool thing with like CGI augmentation, or if not like entirely CGI, that kind of gets the same point across. But like for production value of the time, I was like, I'll give it a pass. It's fine. Like it gets the clear point across of like people were reacting to the flamethrower just like wreaking havoc on this, like, and to like just burns coral to a crisp. And that sequence was more annoying of like he sees what this can do. Why did he let it get that close?
He was shaking his gun. He was too scared to run, right? That's what it was. He was so nervous.
That's what that is? I thought he was just a really bad shot and and just like aiming badly, or
this
like
guy sucks.
I thought that was more like I don't know if this actor's very comfortable with like guns. Then like it did not read to me as Coral is terrified and terrified into paralysis. It just makes him look as a very dumb character as he goes out.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously people talk a lot about the dragon once you've seen the movie, and for me, again, it's hard to say like what bothered me versus didn't, because I'd just seen it so young and been like, okay, sure, yeah. But like the out I can give them too is that, no one's ever seen the dragon in this world and survived, right? Like no one ever makes it to Crab Key and comes off it except for Honey and then Strangway and Corwell there for like a minute and bounce, right? And so theoretically, if you're just like on a ship and like see a fucking flamethrower like moving thing shoot fire, you'd be like, oh, maybe that's a dragon. It's 1962. I haven't even been to fucking space yet in this world. So like, sure, like that's a thing that like maybe makes more sense, right? Because you wouldn't conceivably, like if you're fighting for you, like you wouldn't hear the engine, you would just see it move and then shoot flames, and and that's spooky, right? You only see it at
Mhm.
nighttime, so like that could work as a deterrent, right? And then one person tells another person, tells another person, all of a sudden there's a dragon on Crab Key. Something that, like, they kind of reference in the movie, Doctor No, I'm sure, is fanning the flames of, right, to make people not want to come here. So like I always kind of like could give it that sense and be like, yeah, that makes sense, I guess, right? Like it is a thing of like it is a different world in 1962, right? Like, and now, like in 2021, someone's like, "There's a dragon on Crab Key." I'd be like, "No, there's not."
Yeah.
Like, and it's like an easier thing to be like, "Oh no, we just like fucking, I can see the GPS like coordinates of this thing right now." And so like I give it that out, right? I have no issues with it really. And so yeah, I don't know. Like I think it's silly, it's goofy, but it gets a point across very effectively. And leads them into getting transported into this very nice, essentially like hotel that they're at. With the one downside of them getting drugged.
Yeah.
But otherwise, do you find that sequence weird? Because I still find it sequence very interesting.
I mean, yeah, I was very confused by it.
Yeah, right. It's
like my notes are basically like,
I'm sorry.
okay, they're suddenly at Dr. No's bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
Weird. like, like
no explanation.
He has gone to great lengths up to this point to like keep anybody off this island or whatever, and suddenly not only is he like letting Bond and Honey like in, like there also then becomes like this weird racial element of like, if they were gonna like let them live, why did they burn Coral to a crisp? Was it just because he was a black man kind of in that area or whatever? And so yeah, it just ends up like adding this weird like what's going on now, and then like because yeah, everybody's just treating it like this is a spa resort kind of thing.
Place.
That like obviously like there's sinister things afoot, because we're not gonna let you leave because you made that joke of like give us what I don't remember what
2
Bond
plane
says.
tickets to
Yeah,
London.
there you go. And she's kind of like ha ha ha. But yeah, it was just kind of like this is weird. And then yeah, to immediately like just knock them out, but then also be kind enough once they're knocked out to like tuck them into bed. Like I was like, this is the weirdest B&B. And then like you get a little bit of like justification of Dr. No basically being like, you're the first person, I thought that I could turn basically to, I thought I could get you to join us. So I'm like, okay, I guess that helps a little bit. But
the two headcanon things I came up with, especially watching just today, were like, oh, you like, I respected you, you're one of the two guys who like I wanted to see what you were about kind of thing. And then for why they knocked them out to have it go for a bunch of hours, it was Dr. No being like, but also if you're an asshole, I'm just going to basically put it right on the wire to where there's no time to really fuck with my plan, theoretically, right? And like that's why they knocked him out for like 8 hours, whatever it was, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will say did lead to one of my favorite sequences in the movie, which is Bond going through the vents and like facing this like hellacious gauntlet of stuff, which is directly from the movies, but in a very different way. Or directly from the book, but in a different way.
Yeah, so that sequence goes on for so long that I came up with not one but two pop culture references. Like the first one he starts going through, I was like, come out to the coast, we'll have a couple laughs from Die Hard. And then like it just kept going. And so like in the back of my head I had Morgan Freeman going like, Andy Dufresne crawled through 500 yards of the foulest smelling shit, or like whatever the line from Shawshank is. And I was just like, I mean, obviously, like this predates both those things, but like it was just like the sequence just went on so long, like those were the things that just came to mind.
It's great. I love it.
I do appreciate that. He gets electrocuted and then like uses the shoe to like
smash
like
it
deal
in.
with that. But then it's like, okay, but they like, so they only electrocuted like that little grate.
That would make sense, just to make sure you couldn't get in it. Right?
Yeah,
like, I guess it'd be like, why?
Yeah. I guess part of it's also then like why is that a thing, or like why? Sure. Yeah. But so be it.
It's a cool sequence. I like the sequence of him. Yeah, then him like ripping his shirt up and like using it as like the thing to the hotness of the vent he's in, and like the water coming and blasting past him.
Yeah, I also appreciated just like as they're getting out and fleeing that like Honey Rider had her whole like had a whole subplot going on about like the torture that they had set her up for, of her just, like she's just chained there for like the slowly rising tide to be drowned.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
what the like, where's that deleted scene that just is kind of like, Dr. No monologuing while Bond is like trapped in there, or while he's crawling through the vents. Like,
Yeah.
if the movie were made now, that's what you would see. You would see like
There's a whole thing
as intercut with like Bond going through the vents. You would see like him setting up Dr. Honey before going off to to finalize his evil plan or whatever.
It's great because the James Bond movies and books are very different, right? And I, as I've already mentioned before in this podcast, I love the movies, right? Like, it is a series that is among my very favorite. But I don't like the books, right? And I think one of the elements that Dr. No and the first couple are kind of balancing is how closely versus not closely to hew to what the novels were. And Dr. No, in its case, chose to be relatively faithful, right? And so the scene of Honey chained up is, because I remember always being, as a kid, being like, what the fuck? And then it's because it's just right from the book, right? In the book, there is a whole section of her being chained up, and like there are like crabs and shit that like around her too, like pecking at her or whatever. And then like, yeah, it's just the ocean's gonna come up and swallow her, right? That's all cut out. But they left, well, she can't be with Bond because he's got to do Bond shit, so we're still gonna have her there, right? And like the sequence of Bond going through the vent is from the book, but in the book, it's like an actual like, obstacle course almost, right? And they're like guards in the watchtower who are like talking shit to him as he's trying to like do the obstacles and go through each thing, right? And so they're like taking these elements but like removing in a lot of ways like context. And I think as you get to like the next few movies, they're just going to say, what are cool ideas from book? We're going to take those and make them work in our film and not necessarily leave other shit that doesn't work. But in Dr. No, that is still kind of being worked out. And so you have this random scene of, there's Honey Rider just chained up for the tide to get her. One element I liked in the escape is the idea of, I guess, two things, which ties into as Bond is trying to find Honey, like goes to his room, grabs a guard, and the guard goes, I don't know, just fucking knocks him out, just slugs the dude, and like I gotta find someone else, right? And then when he does get Honey, and they go on like to the top of the oil deck, basically thing it looks like, and find the boat, and he like knocks out the two guys. One of the guys just hanging on the boat on the back for like an extra 20 seconds where Bond like looks back and goes, all right, and like flips him off. But I love the idea of him just like knocking the guy out, and him just like, and the actor, because it's clearly a person, just being like, should I fall? Do I fall in the water? And they only had, I'm sure, like a couple takes of that take of the fucking baseball episode. So it's like, all right, I'm just gonna stay here, I guess. And then Sean Connery looking back, being like, oh, get out of here, in the shot.
I mean, the base blowing up looked like a model.
Definitely that was the model, but
even
just like that's like how hectic that seems.
Yeah,
I'm sure they didn't do like a million takes that, especially considering
all the extras or whatever running around.
Yeah, like they just didn't have the money to do lots of takes, right? Like this was a not expensive film for its time.
Yeah. I do want to circle back because we talked about it a little bit, but I just want to dive into it a little bit more, and I think you did as well. I think you alluded to the scene with Dent, or like the Bond kind of like setting the scene for Dent to think he's got one over on that. Like, there was such a weird like sociopathic nature to that scene that as I was watching it, I'm like, he's okay. So he's gone over to this woman who he knows is trying to kill him. He
check,
sleeps with her a couple times.
Check.
With her like again trying to kill him in the middle, and so like when he finally like carts her off to the coppers, he's like, be mindful of her nail polish or whatever. It's like, okay, sure. And then he goes and like creates like a little, like he goes he like moves cushions around to like to set the scene that they were having drinks over.
Takes
here
off,
he throws his jacket off over there,
fills the drinks weren't there, like it does all that.
Exactly. He pours drinks, goes, sets them over there, so there's another element of like, they showed us probably a little too much, but like because they showed us too much, it just kind of like creates a comedy of like a mini comedy sequence as a result. And then he goes in and like like sets up the pillow, and then he just like throws something off the table and plays solitaire for however long until the time shows up that the guy's gonna do this. And like this whole time I'm just like, okay, so Bond is just like, I mean, very diligently laying a trap for somebody, but like laying the creepiest kind of trap possible. So like I loved it, but I was also just like, Bond has some things he needs to work through.
It's so great. I love that scene. I feel like one of my favorite scenes in the movie, right? Like, and all of that's totally true. And like, especially watching it again now, it's like, oh, it's all the little details, right? It's him, yeah, like pushing in the cushions too, right?
Yeah.
And then like putting his jacket on top, setting the drinks, turning on the music very softly, right? And then just he comes into the bed, does the bed so nice, and then just fucking flings the comforter off, sits down, and just knocks all the shit off the table. It's like, you were doing a really good job here, and you just like fucking said, forget it. I'm gonna play solitaire here.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that he is just there for an indeterminate amount of time. Like it could have been 5 minutes and Dent was gonna be there, or it could have been hours. And I just love this idea of him just being like sitting there playing solitaire, doing nothing else. And then the for me, the great payoff is Dent walks in, shoots all of his bullets, and then has this whole back and forth with Bond, tries to shoot, and basically Dent forgets how many bullets he used.
Yeah.
And it's a great like cap off by Bond, and then just fucking and cold blood murders the guy and gives him one more for good measure.
I like because Bond has done all of this setup, I now like the idea of like Dent walks in, sees sees none of that, and just goes straight to the bedroom, and just Bond did all this extra work that just didn't matter at all.
I definitely had that thought while he was walking there of like, I was like, I don't think it shows Dent in the living room looking at anything. And then, sure enough, you just hear him enter, walk straight to the bedroom, boom, boom, boom. And like, maybe the pillow in the bed thing, maybe that was a great idea. Like maybe that worked really well. Everything else, so I just don't like. It added to the ambiance, I guess. Like if Dent was looking, he'd be like, "All right, great," but like Dent would have already known that conceivably the secretary and Bond were in bed together. I also did have the thought for like maybe the first time in my life of like, did he not give a fuck about the secretary?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like,
yep, he just puts like bullets into whatever body is in there.
Yeah,
or
bodies. Was his game plan like, oh, she would definitely be gone now, right? Like, and like just assume that. Because there was a lot of him just being like, I'm just gonna walk in and just shoot whatever I see.
I guess the illusion, or like what's kind of established, is that the nail polish that she's like using would probably have knocked Bond out. So maybe it was like, maybe this isn't like their first rodeo, and she's done this before. She knocks the person out and then ducks out or whatever. But yeah, it was a weird thing.
Or again, maybe because it's just one long pillow. So maybe his assumption is, I only see one pillow. It's just gonna be Bond. She would know to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. The fact that he empties the entire magazine, though, that guy was ready to fucking kill some people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it leads to a great Bond. Like, just one liner.
Yeah. Well, he's got the he had the the fear of no put into him or whatever.
The tarantula sequence too.
Yeah, right? as I was like talking about this, I wanted to circle back to that. Like, that was a sequence that like I think just went on too long.
It's a long sequence.
Like it definitely is like there to like ratchet up the tension or whatever, but it also like, it from a modern storytelling perspective, that scene could have been half as short and still gotten the exact same point across.
Mm-hmm.
So like in hindsight, it looks like filler of like, okay, we rented out this tarantula for the day, so we're just gonna like watch as it slowly crawls up this guy's body and cut back to a handful of reaction shots with Connery. So yeah, it was just like a weird, and then the fact that it is like the tarantula crawls off of him for some reason onto a pillow, and like that's like he just smashes it with the shoe over and over again. I was like, all right. I guess that's how I would really react in that situation, except for the fact that I would not have like sat there and let it like crawl that much. I would have flung it off as like quickly as I could. And gone like done that way sooner. Like the fact that he just kind of like lets it crawl on him for as long as he does, I'm just like, what's the end game here?
Right, because like you said, like conceivably if a tarantula's crawling on my leg, or anything's coming, like, and I feel like I'm just gonna like knock it and like roll out of bed. The issue being we wouldn't have gotten the shot of the tarantula, right? Like,
Right,
like,
yeah.
I had to wait for it to crawl at least to his chest.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like maybe he like knocks it off. Like, there was definitely a certain point when it was on his like going up his shoulder. I was like, does it go on his face? And I was so much just like, I don't remember it lasting this long.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept being like, when is he gonna knock it off? And then yeah, finally it gets off and goes on the pillow right next to his head, and he like freaks out, right? I think for me, the tarantula scene is emblematic of the whole movie, where it's like, this is the shortest Bond movie at like an hour and 50 minutes long, and again, in a classic, to use a video game comparison, it's a 40-hour video game that could have been 20.
Yeah.
Like, this movie could have easily been an hour and a half long. But also, like, there was probably an element in 1962 of like, if we're gonna make a movie, we want to make sure everyone gets their money's worth, right, out of it. And like understanding that. But it's a weird scene too, because even as a kid, there's very clearly a shot of like a tarantula on a glass plate above Sean Connery.
Mm-hmm.
And then it like actually on a stuntman's arm.
Yeah.
And then back to like the glass plate. And like, it's like this weird thing of like, I understand why they needed the shots of like Sean Connery, but I almost would have rather have them just had like his reaction shot and the arm, and not like the overhead shot of it like on him, because that's when I'm like, oh, this is like, that doesn't look good, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, you say that, and I saw like that in some of the trivia and stuff. I didn't like, I wasn't looking for it, I guess. So like my first time watching here, I didn't see that, or like
Sure.
it was just kind of like, oh, like I did not, I did like, the illusion there was not broken for me.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure it's something that like, now that I know it's there, will stand out to me like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing. Like, a lot of times people, especially like nowadays, when they like digitally de-age somebody, or when they use CGI to like bring an actor into a movie that is long since passed or something like that, if you know to look for that, you're going to be much more inclined to see it, versus like, I've talked to like, I remember I went and saw like Rogue One with my family or whatever, and they had zero qualms with how Tarkin looks in that movie. And it's not that they like don't know that actor's long since passed or whatever. It's just like they thought they'd found somebody who looked really like him or something like that. And so it's that kind of thing of like, if you're looking for it, you're going to be much more inclined to see it. So like, yeah, maybe when you were a kid, you didn't catch it that first time, but it came up another time.
I watched it again and
like
again
that.
and again, and was like, this doesn't look right. Yeah. I mean, there's an element of the Henry Cavill Superman mustache,
exactly, yeah.
right? Where like, since I first saw that movie, I knew that there was a mustache like ripped off from the movie at some point in time. But I watched the movie and was like, I think honestly, he looks fine the whole movie. Like, I never had like this visceral reaction of like, this is trash. I'm like, it looks fine. Like, does it look,
or he looks like the same amount of CGI'd the entire movie anyway.
That's my thing. Yeah, that's my thing. Like, I don't like see a scene where it's like it's gratuitously worse. It's like, he looks fine. Like, I think he looks fine. I think you're just trying to be mad about something, and like, if you're gonna try to be mad about something, you're probably gonna succeed.
Yeah, it's that thing. Like, if people hadn't heard the stories of he couldn't shave his mustache because of Mission Impossible, like, it so much of, I think, especially in like the circles we kind of run in, is like we follow too much news sometimes, and so like that kind of colors our perception of these things. So yeah, like, I mean, for me, I didn't like the scene ran long because it was just kind of like constantly going back and forth. But I like it wasn't until afterwards, when I was like looking through some trivia on the movie, that I saw like, oh yeah, like there's a very visible glass between Connery and the because Connery was like deathly afraid of the spider or whatever. Like, I was like,
fair.
Okay, cool. Like I didn't catch it, so I imagine a less discerning audience in 1962 or 1963 also probably might have missed it the first time through.
It's interesting. You touch on something that I want to kind of circle back on as well, which I think is, the circles that we run in, right? Like, I think of this conversation a lot when we talk about trailers, and people getting upset that trailers show too much. And it's like, well, people in our circle and spheres consume trailers not like most people consume trailers,
Yeah,
right?
we go
Like,
out of our way to watch them.
yeah, like most people go see a trailer either when it's in a movie before they watch something, or maybe they'll see it drop online, they'll watch it like once and be like, that was great, and then like that's it, right? Like they're not watching it multiple times in a row, dissecting it, watching like, trailer rewinds, all this kind of shit. Like that's not what the normal person does. And I think there's an element sometimes, like I know it's really trite and a cliche to say like Twitter is an echo chamber kind of thing, but like there is also like an element of truth in the sense of just like if everyone's just talking about the same thing and what they don't like about it, or like here's this fun fact about it, then it's just gonna inevitably seep into your brain a little bit. Like you're just going to be that much more aware of something or looking at something or that kind of thing, right? Like, and if you don't want to get spoiled by a trailer, like just watch trailers like regular people before a movie, right? Like people, like the people who were, I think it was Endgame. I knew someone who, like, whenever he went to see a movie before Endgame came out, he would literally, and like there was an Avengers Endgame trailer beforehand, he would literally like fucking earmuff and like close his eyes kind of shit. And it's like, well, like you could just watch a trailer. Like it's all right. Like first off, it's a 3-hour long movie. This 2.5-minute trailer is going to not show you everything. And second off, like it's okay to just like see things as long as you're not like actively trying to like do rewinds on it. You'll probably be fine. Like they don't want you to get spoiled either. That's not their intent. And so, yeah, I think that is also a valid point to bring up on this. But we've gotten a long way from James Bond. Bringing it back, we're going to start by getting to the first podcast within a podcast. Trevor, this is your podcast. You can kind of take us however you want.
Oh, we're doing mine first. We're not doing Logie's hot take.
You want to do Logie's hot take first?
I mean, that's the one you have listed first in the doc. But
we'll do Logie's hot take. I mean, like the interesting thing about Doctor No is, I think it is one of the least hot take inducing Bond movies. Right, but like what is my hottest hot take for Doctor No? It's such a hard one to do. Like every movie, my hottest hot take for Doctor No is it doesn't have a hot take. No, my hottest hot take is probably going to be then the whole. You know what? Like yeah, like I'll go this way. Like I don't know if I get Honey Rider, I think is my hottest hot take. Like even as a kid, right? Because Honey Rider emerging from the ocean, like fucking Aphrodite.
I did
like
want
an iconic scene.
I did want to circle back. That's what I was alluding to earlier. Is like I thought that was Pussy Galore. Like I've seen that image on the internet kind of thing.
Honey Rider. It's
never knew it was Honey Rider kind of thing. I knew it was a Bond girl, but I just didn't associate which one correctly. I did in my doctor notes. I had to throw that. I'm sad that like I never get to use that again. But in my notes for this movie, I was like, oh, this definitely would have awoken like a generation of teenagers or whatever in the in the 60s.
It's weird. Like even as a kid, like I never got Honey Rider. Maybe it's because I did watch so many back to back, right? Like I didn't have. Certainly I wasn't in like 1962 where like obviously film was very different than like how it is today. But like maybe because I got to watch so many other ones after it was like that scene, like even as a kid, I like knew like, oh, this is like a big deal. Cause like they just stop on it basically. They like freeze frame it like you're fucking Ferris Bueller. But I was like, okay, yeah. And then like I kind of kept watching, like there were other Bond girls who made much more of an impression on me. Right. And so like my hottest hot take with Dr. No is probably the fact that like, when you see, top like Bond, either movie moments or top Bond like girl moments, like this one always is listed. I'm always like, I don't know if I get it. It doesn't help the fact that like I've known from a young age that like that is not her actual voice. And so it's always like this weird disconnect of like, this is just a weird character. Like her backstory is super bizarre. And like sad, but then they just like blow past it and go like, hey, I've read every encyclopedia from A to T. And I'm like, are you reading them one a year? Like, I don't know how impressive that is. Like, I was like, that could be either really like from when you were 8, you're not 18. You're not like, you're in at least your 20s here. And so that's like such a, like, I maybe know more than you. And it's like, I don't like, it's a weird fun fact. And like her voice is never right. And so like, she's always been such a weird character for me. So yeah, my hottest hot take for Dr. No is probably the fact that I think Honey Rider is like definitely an overrated Bond character. That does very little for me. Like she's nice, like she's very friendly. I guess, and is big into her like seashells by the seashore, but otherwise, I don't know.
I mean, like on her in like this is another case. Like I didn't see the bit about like her voice being dubbed through like until after the fact.
Until I brought it up.
So I didn't realize it. I mean, like it's I knew it after watching the movie and looking at the trivia myself as well. But like in the moment, it's actually something I was gonna kind of like applaud the movie on almost is like the dubbing is like really like it's, I mean, it's spot on for what it is. And if anything, like my issues with like the sound was more like it didn't match the scenario that somebody was in. Like I think of when the ship comes up and is trying to like, you know, weed them out of the beach, and the guy's like talking into a megaphone. He sounds exactly the same talking to the megaphone as when the megaphone's, you know, not in his mouth and he's just telling his crew. So like there were elements of that where it's like, okay, the sound mix isn't like right for these things, but like I thought they did a really good job. So for me, there wasn't like a disconnect between like her look and her sound or whatever. It was a like, oh, especially with the other women that like we've been introduced to as like Bonds, you know, like also I wanted to give a shout out to like the fact that like James Bond has become this you know, this iconic thing because the person who had just introduced herself to him was Sylvia Trench, and he just kind of like was imitating that. Like that feels like that never should have become a thing. That James Bond should never have become a thing. But obviously does become a staple of the series. But yeah, so like compared to her and compared to the secretary, like this woman comes out like incredibly scantily clad by comparison to the others, so that's going to be like sex appeal for, you know, the audience or whatever, but that also has like the knife and can seemingly handle herself. Like she's prepared for, you know, if something should go awry or something. Like I appreciated that she's not, I mean, like ultimately she kind of becomes a damsel in distress, but like on first glance she's not just going to be a damsel in distress, a
knife wielding.
So like I appreciate that element of the character, but yeah, then it definitely is like, oh, this is something that is like lost on the cutting room floor or lost in the translation from book to like, because yeah, we get like what is my note on this, like Honey Rider, tragic backstory for Honey, but she don't fuck around with Black Widows. That's like, that is how I summarized her whole like dark past kind of thing, and losing her dad or whatever. And so it was like, okay, and then we just moved on. Like she killed somebody and then just like, they blew past it.
And again, it's a thing that they just took from the book, and we're like, but what if we just do this 3-minute narration version of it and let's go and hit the ground running. I mean, I think for me, it's an interesting element of it. Trevor, you can take this segment however you want.
Right,
segment to run with, do whatever you want to do.
So yeah, we talked about that out as kind of a, you know, new person jumping in. You know, I'll examine kind of like what hasn't aged well of these movies.
And what has aged well? You can also give shout outs if you want.
Sure, yeah. I mean, for this, I will focus on like I kind of already touched on it a little bit. Like the action looks dated, like especially by comparison. So like those whole elements of the film haven't aged well. Like the fact that, I know that we've talked about this before, but like Austin Powers coming out and seeing Austin Powers before seeing this drastically is going to color my thoughts of a lot of these old movies, because Austin Powers, it turns out, is probably just doing Bond things, but doing Bond things in the 90s drastically different than doing things here in the 60s. So in that same vein, of course, there's like this, you know, air of misogyny, not overly abundant throughout the movie. Like it's pretty kind of like contained or whatever. Everything seems largely consensual in here. I will say though, in like researching and doing a lot of like looking at the trivia myself, like there's way more problems in like the behind the scenes of how this movie was made, of like just the rampant sexism, both on the women being cast, including like, stories about Ursula, aka Honey Rider, being cast potentially off of just like a wet t-shirt contest photo or something like that. Just she had the look, and so the broccoli was like, yeah, let's go for it. But then also on the flip side of that, you've mentioned a couple times Jack Lord as Felix Leiter. Like there was drastic concern, and he kind of ends up getting recast potentially because of this, that he was too sexy to like, so he ends up kind of like surpassing Bond, and you don't want your leading man being looked over, for that. Even Sean Connery himself, like, is kind of like, they looked at him more as like a sex symbol than, an actor who could do the job first. So there's like a whole bunch of like problematic stuff in that regard.
It's interesting on that element too, watching it again now, because like out of Sean Connery's movies, this is the one that I've seen the most recently. I probably last watched it like 2-3 years ago, and it's interesting seeing it again, where this is probably the Connery movie where he is shirtless the most, where he is just like, hey, I am in good shape, look at me, as opposed to later on where he will not just be viewed as a sex symbol first and then an actor, like you kind of touched on, right? Like there's definitely an element of, the male gaze looking at Honey Rider coming out of the ocean, but also like the female gaze looking at Sean Connery just constantly shirtless for like large chunks of this movie. Like he literally gets naked in the film. And it's just like a plot point, right? Like,
yeah.
In some ways, you can almost say it's very like equal opportunity. Like him and Honey each just get naked, like constantly. Each are very scantily clad, constantly. And so it is interesting to see it from that perspective as well, right? Because like obviously one of the things I didn't pull, but is that like Cubby Broccoli liked Sean Connery after his performance in one very, I think, very, very first Disney Plus shows.
I think it was like, I think it was number 2.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, to see that to now, right? And to see, like, yeah, he looks great, right? And to be fair, Sean Connery does look great in this movie. Like, it is him, if in the best shape of his run as James Bond, certainly close to it. And so, there is definitely an element of that perspective, right? And Jack Lord is really interesting. I almost should have included this in trivia for a lot of reasons, but one of the other reasons he doesn't get brought back as Felix Leiter, the one that I see talked about the most, is the fact that after this movie, he wanted like star billing with Sean Connery. And they were like, well, one of you is the main character of the film series, and one of you is Jack Lord, who is not even famous from Hawaii Five-0 yet. So maybe no, right? And he wanted like a big like raise and wanted to like match him when his Connery made and all this kind of stuff. And so they didn't. And it ended up being like one of the weird quirks of the Bond series is the fact that, Felix Leiter is going to be in like 14 movies, but he will be played by a different actor essentially every time except for one occasion until Jeffrey Wright. And so they kind of inadvertently started that trend based off the contract negotiations with Jack Lord here.
Yeah. It was Darby O'Gill and the Little People, by the way. For yes. Those, that was you can go watch me and Cameron talk about that on that Disney Plus show, or you can be like many other people and just search for that every year on St. Patrick's Day and inadvertently find our YouTube video on it.
That's such a young Sean Connery too. Then
it's. It was
58.
It was 58, 59, something like that. It was a few years before 20s, this, and it very much is. Yeah, like the trivia kind of touches on. Yeah, he like. Somebody saw him in that and was like, "Oh, that could be our Bond." And so yeah, it was weird, like seeing that, and not realizing, I don't think until I was like pulling together that D plus notes that predated his first Bond appearance or whatever. So I was like, "Oh yeah, this is weird." Seeing a younger Sean Connery in a Disney movie about leprechauns.
In terms of the fights. The only thing I want to say on that is, again, they very much figure it out. There really is only like a handful of fighting sequences, and especially like the movie that will come after this, I think is where most will get the image of Sean Connery being a brawler,
Mhm.
and from Rush with Love, and some of the the famous fight scenes that movie will have. So I'm very curious to see what you think of next week's fights, as
Yeah.
opposed to
I
this
mean,
one.
like, and that's something that I throughout this series will probably be like just having to kind of keep in context of like the one of my understandings of the Bond series is like
Hmm.
it is kind of a sign of the times of
Yeah,
action. And so like yeah, a Bond of this era was brawler versus a Bond of the Brosnan era was, more kind of like shooty, like not a ton in the way of like, hand-to-hand stuff. And then
hmm,
you get to like the Daniel Craig era that is very much influenced by the Bourne
Jason
movies
Bourne.
and
Yeah.
Mission Impossibles and stuff like that. And so he gets, much more, physically hand to hand kind of stuff. Um, and so the series has evolved over the years,
Yeah.
and so it's just kind of like for the time, yeah, this was an action movie. This was
Hmm.
you had this fight sequence that is 4 moves long or whatever.
Yeah.
You have this little car chase sequence that ends in a car exploding as it flies off the cliff.
Yep.
Um, and those are just kind of like that's what it was. The last thing that I want to kind of touch on, just in
Mm.
terms of like, I don't think it holds up really well, is
Okay.
it's not nearly as egregious as it could have been, especially for the time. But like Quarrel and a lot of the like black characters in this film are like really like pushing that line of like like borderline kind of Uncle Remus type character from Song of the South or whatever.
Mm.
Like it
Mm.
like Coral, especially because we spend so much time with him, like always calling Bond Captain
Captain.
is effectively like like almost a euphemism for yes master kind of thing. In a not, again, it's not like nearly as bad as it could be, but it definitely, like, watching it now in 2021, I was like, I feel uncomfortable about this almost caricature of a black man kind of in this role. And so the fact that, and it's not helped at all by the fact that, yeah, like his final moment is shaking with a gun and being just lit on fire, and going out in that way as opposed to like a hero's kind of exit or something like that.
I think that I would agree that that is the element of the film that is the weakest. Actually, not necessarily for like the captain element as much, because Bond is actually technically a naval officer,
Yeah, but it's like,
um,
but he doesn't know that in first meeting or whatever. Like
right?
he's
And like
he's saying that just because that's how he addresses people, like before he gets to know them at all.
the captain thing always rang out to me more of just like almost like a tongue-in-cheek kind of reference. For me, the bigger thing with Quirrell, right, is when they're at Pussfellow's club, and everyone's dancing, like the photographer comes in and she calls Quirrell an ape.
Yeah.
Right, and like that was when it was like, oh, okay, like I don't know about that one at all, right? And then yeah, the elements of Quirrell being the one who is shaken, right? Because in the book, Quirrell does not die,
Mm.
right? And so, but yeah, him being the one who's like shaken and like fires off the round, and then is not a great look, right? I think him just being kind of the scared one in general is not a great
Yeah.
look. Um, but those are the elements of me or for me that are just not the best, right?
I do want to shout out though, as a flip side to that, like shout out to him completely no selling the photographer, like breaking a like seemingly just stabbing him in the face with glass.
Yeah,
Like
and then just
it just kind of like wipes it off or whatever. And
so
like
good.
no reaction to it. I'm like, so
You want me
again
to break
that
your arm?
exactly like yeah, that like
yeah,
there's effectively that turns him into like 2 different characters throughout this movie. There's like that
yeah,
character that's like
yeah.
completely imposing and like will take no shit from anybody, and then the character that he is as soon as like Crab Key comes up in conversation,
Yeah.
where he's like no
Yeah.
no please sir,
Yeah.
and just yeah, so like I'm of those 2 minds on him. Of like he
Yeah.
had some really cool moments, and then he has some like really uncomfortable moments.
I agree. This will not be the last time that we see a member of the Quirrell family in the series, though. So it's a nice tease. After that, we've got our,
Also,
villains corner.
I just,
you got one more?
Well, I just also want to like, it's not a, it doesn't fall kind of under this realm, but it's just kind of like a,
Okay.
in doing the research, the character of like Pussfeller, I was like, what kind of name is that? And so like seeing that in the book, it's he wrestled an octopus, and so he felled an octopus, and that's how he's got his name.
Mm-hmm.
But then they made him like, oh, he took out an alligator, and that's like, and they're like, that's how he got his name. It's like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, what are you talking about? So like, instead, that name just kind of ends up also being like,
a weird one.
A weird one. Also, like, just kind of like, is that a racist name or what? Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
And so like, the context that is lost there ends up like hurting that character a little bit. And also, I think part of this is just at a first glance, and it's admittedly also my own like stereotypes, I'm sure, coming through, but like at a glance, the first time I saw Pussfeller and Quarrel, I thought they were like a couple of the Three Blind Mice characters. Like I because we hadn't seen enough of those characters or whatever in the smash up kind of thing, or and like one of them has hair similar to Pussfeller. I was like, so like I immediately thought like Quarrel was a bad guy, and he's like leading Bond into a trap, and then he kind of ends up leading Bond into a trap, but like no, it's not that trap. They're on Felix's side, whatever. Like fine, but it was just kind of like that's a weird thing that also kind of jumped out at me, and it's like, as I'm saying this, I'm also realizing like this is again, I put this as much on myself as anything because it has an air of like all black people look alike, and I'm not, that's definitely not what I'm trying to apply here, but the I guess maybe for this era I just wasn't expecting that, so I didn't know that the disconnect between some of those characters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think even the Three Blind Mice, their exit is weird, right? Like to me, their last scene is when they try to kill Bond and then they don't, right? And I think this movie,
and then like
probably a dozen times,
a car lights up or whatever, and they get scared by a bright light.
Yeah, they can't shoot because they'll be seen. But yeah, let's hopping into kind of the next section here, which is our Ragu Bagu inspired villains corner. We have Dr. Julius No, member of Spectre, man bent on toppling some American missiles for nefarious reasons. Trevor, how much of a bad guy is Dr. No? Where are you at with him?
I mean, like, You
seem pretty lukewarm on Dr. No.
Yeah, largely that's kind of where I fall. Is like he was a more intimidating presence before he got introduced into the movie.
Sure.
It's very much kind of almost that the Jaws effect of like he's set up and you don't see him for so long that like in my mind I'm expecting this like arch evil terrible guy, and when he ends up just being a guy who's got like this weird underground lair with like giant magnified fish, it's just like this is more silly than anything. I'm not really scared by you because I don't feel like I should be scared by you. I feel like you're
magnified fish.
You're not a fighter. You're not a threat to me in a physical sense apart from these weird mechanical hand things that you have, but
that do him in.
Right?
Yeah, that's why he can't grip the bars because they're so slick.
Yeah. I mean even that, like, I didn't see, like, even that is like, it's murky in how that's kind of like portrayed. It's like, okay, he clearly can't grab the thing, but like realistically what we've seen should be that he can grab the thing and just would crush the bars, and so he wouldn't like climb up with it. He would like he would bring the thing down with him or something. Yeah, and it would sink with him or something. So yeah, like from that perspective, like, and then also I guess just because like toppling isn't a thing that I'm like particularly aware of, like I don't quite know what his evil plan was. I guess it was to redirect the missile, but I don't know what that would have done apart from killing John Glenn. I don't know what. So like he definitely had a lot of resources because he stole 10 million from Chinese triads or something. Yeah,
Yeah, the
I don't know,
tongs. Yeah.
but like I do not like. I mean, obviously, he's going to be like the top of the list for now, but
Yep. I was
I
gonna say.
like I don't expect him to stay top of the list long.
I don't expect him to stay top of the list for a single week, actually. I think next week's going to top him. Yeah, but with that being said, Dr. No is the top of the baddies list for right now for us. So, congratulations. Also the bottom, if you want to look at it that way. For QLab, I already ran over it. There's only one gadget. It is the Walter PPK.
Yeah, I didn't even realize until looking at like some of the trivia stuff that was supposed to be the Q type of character, because he's not introduced. Yeah, he's just kind of like he's an armorer. But even that, like, that's another sequence where I was just like, I don't know the purpose of this sequence. Like they spend so much time setting up that like the Beretta's Bond's gun, but then like, it's a pea shooter or whatever, and so they're giving him a new gun. Like it felt like a thing pulled from the books that probably would have had much more context.
Ding ding ding.
Here it's just like so like in the books is like, oh, in Casino Royale he's got a Beretta, and then like a couple books go by and they upgrade him to this Walter BBK. I don't know, like, but yeah, just for this it was just like, this is a long sequence just to give him a gun, where you could have just had him have the Walter PPK from the beginning and it wouldn't have changed a thing.
Basically, so there are 2 points on that. So basically, again, Dr. No is not the first book. There are actually quite a few books that came out before Dr. No.
Yeah.
Including From Russia with Love, which will be next week's episode, came out first in the books. And in that, he's got a Beretta and it doesn't work and he gets injured, right? And so in the books...
So he's on the shelf for 6 months that they kind of touch on.
They make it a point to give him a new gun because his gun didn't work from the last one, right? It's the whole point there. Here, they do that, but like you said, without any of the context, which is a recurrent problem that we've already kind of identified in the movie. I like the scene, if only because if you view Dr. No like I do as like, this is the beginning of this character of James Bond, because the books don't matter, right? It's basically them giving him his like official gun for the first time and kind of getting rid of his like gun he'd been using, but that they don't like, right? And so it's kind of a cool, like, he is now equipped. This is what Bond is going to be decked out with for like years to come. It's a cool kind of like origin moment here. But in like the context of like what it should have been, yeah, it gets messed up because they put that book after this movie and because they don't even talk about it really. And so I like it because it's a nice scene. I like it also because like it's Bond. You've seen him kind of go against authority by like him trying to take the gun out and then M con him out on it is a cool moment. And then also, again, M saying he's got no time to talk, Moneypenny, just leave, is all a nice scene. But it's definitely devoid of the context it should have had. Or at least could have had. But yeah, that is the only QLab gadget. It's a great one. I mean, it'll be in his steed for 30 plus years here.
He's also proficient with a Geiger counter.
Also proficient with a Geiger counter, which he got from Government House, so potentially he could have got shipped out from MI6.
And he did have his vehicle shipped out, so he's got.
That's true.
They make a point of that, so that's why he's driving on the with the steering wheel on the right.
Yeah, that is a great point. Oh, I wonder too. I don't know what side of the road they drive on in Jamaica, actually, because since it was a British colony, I would not be shocked if they still drive on the right side. Because that's the thing. That's like the other element of this in my mind watching it. Well,
the driver from the airport, Jack, is like the steering wheel's on the left. Side? Yeah, he drives on the left side of the road. So like they drive on the left side of the road, but it's just Bond's car that he has that has the steering wheel on the right, side. But he's still driving on the left hand side of the road.
It's definitely an interesting element because I don't know when Jamaica became independent. Like, I'm pretty positive it was in the 60s, but not yet, right? Because like it seems like, because very clearly the British still seem to be in control of the island, right? And so like there's definitely an element of like, I'm not sure in terms of the driving stuff. But yes, and then the final element we have here is that music moment. It's pretty simple. There's no theme to really discuss other than the main one. It is fantastic, but it will not be in the ranking that we'll do as we go on because it is the main Bond theme. But it is very good right out from the gate, like you said, Trev.
The colony of Jamaica gained independence from the United Kingdom on August 6th, 1962. So about a month or a couple months before the movie came out. But definitely like while it was filming.
Interesting. Okay.
But
Very
yeah.
good to know. Yeah, so with that, really, we just dive right into Trevor. What are your final thoughts and kind of review of Dr. No?
I mean, it was a solid opening entry.
Hmm.
I had a good enough time with it. There were definitely some things where I just kind of like, I had to kind of like turn my brain off and just be like, this was the 60s. It
Hmm.
was a different time, in movies and in storytelling in general. Um, but again, like the focus on let's follow this trail of clues till the end, goal, I think really helps it because it wasn't action set piece, then like some, interaction set stuff, blah blah blah, and then back to another action set piece that was gonna fall short. Um, it is kind of like just constantly trying to figure out what's around the corner, and it did a good job of kind of like, for me, the first time watching it, not
Hmm.
knowing, who was on whose side right out the gate. Like I said, with like Quarrel and Pussfeller, like I took the note, like Quarrel seems incredibly sketch, and then like goes off his, like, as he kind of like walks this path on the docks, constantly looking over his shoulder at Bond or whatever, in the most conspicuous manner. So
Yeah.
I would not have pegged him as like, oh, he's going to be on Bond's side for this. Um, so that whereas like on the flip side, like Dent immediately struck me as like, oh no, he's really sketch as fuck. Like, you're
Yeah.
a geologist and you like are immediately dismissing these things that Strangway has brought to you. Yeah, okay, yeah, I don't buy you at all. But yeah, I like, overall I enjoyed it. It was a fine movie. Not I knowing very little about kind of like where the rest of the stuff, like I can see this
Hmm.
being like a middle of the pack kind of movie.
Yep. A to F. What would you grade it?
Hmm, I mean, like a C plus.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I would probably give it a B minus, right? So I'm in a very similar vein with you. I think Doctor No is probably, knock on wood, I think it's probably the weakest of Sean Connery's movies. I think there is just an element of, like I said at the very beginning, them figuring it out in a lot of ways. So kind of, you know, getting the right adjustments on who the character is, what the baddie should be like, what the story should do. I think the detective elements work really well. It maybe goes on a little bit too long. Like, if anything, the biggest critique I have of the film is that it's too long, which seems weird to say for the shortest Bond movie, but there we are. I like Doctor No. I get why people wouldn't, but that character works for me. I think that there are a lot of elements of this movie that I enjoy, and then there are a lot of elements where I'm like, this could have been tighter. I think it does drag at times, um, but I still think it is a good movie. Right, I still enjoy my time with it for sure. Um, and so, I'll give it a B minus. It will obviously be both of our top ranked Bond movies for the time being. Congratulations. But it will be one that I don't think it holds for too long. But I do end up expecting it to fall probably in the middle of the pack, right? Like, I don't think it's gonna go too low. Like, I still think it's better than some of the like actually bad movies, right? That we're gonna get to. And yeah, I mean, I enjoy myself. I liked it a lot. And I'm excited for what it sets up in kind of the Connery era Bond movies and where we go from here. Laid a solid foundation, and they will just build off it with continuing success from this point onwards. Um, so obviously, we each rank it number one in our personal list. I would assume we agree it's also number one in the overall list because 1 out of 1. So that is where we have Doctor No for right now. Um, and so with that being said, that's everything. Thank you for listening or watching that Bond show. Please rate and review it on iTunes. Let us know
It's
what you like and don't like.
This one's not going on iTunes. this
It's
one's
right.
this one's just a
It's just on
video.
YouTube. All
Yeah.
right, it's right. I mean, you can also rate us and review us on iTunes as well for all the
I
other
mean, sure,
podcasts we
yeah.
have. Like and subscribe and share with your friends on YouTube. Let them know. Leave any comments if you have any fun facts that you have about the movie as well. Anything that you agree or disagree about with our Dr. No thoughts as we kind of go through every one of the 25 Ion Productions Bond movies. But yeah, that is everything. You can find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything that you want to plug?
So we're recording a lot of this ahead of time. So for the foreseeable future, like these aren't going to really be able to be current plugs. Apart from, I will say, this is going out kind of in January, so keep an eye out on that nerdy site for all of our Game of the Year content as well. I'm sure we'll be having many a conversation about our favorite games of 2021.
You can find me at Lefty Logie or Lefty Loggy, Logggy on the internet. I will echo Trevor's shout out to check out all of our Game of the Year and End of the Year content. That's going to be wrapping up when this goes live. And yeah, until next time, play your games and be good to each other. Class dismissed. I'll just take all of the outros until I figure it together.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Leave.